I'd now like to go to House Bill 1124, Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody on the panel with me?
Sure.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, committee members. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark and pleased to be here to present House Bill 1124. I have a robust panel today, so I'll keep my overview fairly simple. House Bill 1124, Right to Repair, would allow consumers to exercise the full rights of ownership over the products they purchase, including the right to repair those products. Now, this sounds pretty simple and straightforward, so why does it require legislation? Because unfortunately, over time, and with the advancement of technology, manufacturers have made it more and more expensive and more inconvenient to repair products, especially digital electronic products. Some manufacturers retain the ability to repair their products exclusively for themselves, and some choose to negotiate business agreements with designated authorized repair providers. As a result, it becomes too expensive, too inconvenient, or in some cases, simply impossible to make even simple repairs, because the manufacturer can simply choose not to repair a product, requiring the consumer to purchase a new one. This leaves the consumer with the only choice to purchase a replacement product or go without. And the reality is, in the course of our world today, given our dependence on electronic devices, going without isn't really a viable option. So the only choice is to purchase a new product. So this is problematic for several reasons. First, as I mentioned earlier, consumers lose their full rights of ownership in not being able to repair the products they own. They're forced to spend more money on overpriced repairs or purchasing replacements. Our stream of electronic waste is an ever-growing burden and strain on our environment. And our small businesses that provide independent repair services are suffering. House Bill 1124 addresses these problems by requiring manufacturers to make the necessary documentation, parts, tools, or updates available to independent repair providers or owners on fair and reasonable terms. This will help us keep more money in consumers' pockets and in our local economy. It will decrease the proliferation of electronic waste, and it will help us be more sustainable and resilient by maintaining a strong network of independent repair businesses. I ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Chairman, my name is Emily Scar with Marilyn Perg, the State Public Interest Research Group. We have small donor members across the state. We support HB 1124, Right to Repair, or as we like to call it, just let us fix our stuff. Companies are using their power in the marketplace to make it harder to repair things or even designing them to fail. And when we can't fix them, we have to buy new, as the delegate said, which has drastic consequences for our environment and our pocketbooks. To be clear, this policy is already in effect for car manufacturers and independent repair shops through a voluntary legal agreement that they created, an MOU, similar to what we heard before, after Massachusetts passed a similar law like this in 2014. So what we're doing is taking that law and agreement that's worked for car manufacturers and applying it to all electronic devices. It's tested and it works. While no state has taken action yet, states introducing bills has pushed some of the industry to move in the right direction, which is great to hear. But we know that we're going to need legislation and to ensure that all companies are actually enforcing right to repair and making sure that folks have access to the tools and information they need to repair things. So when you need to repair a smartphone, an electronic device, your washing machine is smart these days even, or a computer-enabled tractor, you need things like spare parts, documentation, and diagnostic software and specialty tools. And so what we're doing is actually breaking up the monopoly that those manufacturers have with them in their licensed repair shops. And so that independent repair shops and some very handy individuals, but more likely independent repair shops, can fix things. We estimate that Marylanders throw 7,000 cell phones each day, and electronic waste is the fastest stream of waste in the world. I just want to address one concern around cybersecurity. This does not in any way affect people's ability to actually edit code. I'm not a coder, so we have lots of other folks who can ask technical questions. But devices are either secure or they're not, and the information we're asking for shouldn't jeopardize that. So with that, I recommend a favorable report. Thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, committee chairman and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Rob Link from the Repair Association. We're a small nonprofit advocating for right to repair. Today I'm here to represent the thousands of repair people and repair shop owners who take good care of our technology every single day. I myself used to own a successful repair business in the DC metro area, a small business that at one point had 10 repair shop locations and employed 75 people. I tried for years to get Apple's attention to help them repair their devices, iPhones, iPads, and iPods, that I saw in my shop every single day. Unfortunately, the only attention I got from Apple was negative. More on that in a second. Right to repair legislation is past due. Today, I want to talk to you about small business. The vast majority of independent repair shops around the country are small businesses. Many of them people who have found their niche in the world and have lifted themselves and their families up. Some are here today. Say hi, guys. Or they're watching this broadcast to see what you will do. Why? Because they're under attack from large corporations who want to restrict repair in order to sell more devices when, in many cases, a new device is not needed. This monopoly on repair has to end now before more small business people are hurt. In Maryland, small business thrives. You know that. There are over 581,000 small businesses in Maryland, which is 99.5% of Maryland businesses. 1.1 million people are employed by these small businesses, which is more than 50% of Maryland's private workforce. Since my time's limited, I'm going to skip ahead. I was going to tell you a little bit of story about my business and how Apple came in, raided my shops with ICE agents to try to find customs infractions, scared my staff half to death, almost arrested a couple of them, and it led to the downfall of our business. I have that in my notes that I filed if anybody's interested in reading that story. I sold my business in 2016 because I just could not compete with Apple. Right now, we need right to repair because small business is getting hurt bad, and I'll just be another second here. Capital Mac in Baltimore, after 3 decades of business, recently closed. They were an Apple sales and service authorization. District Repair in DC closed after 10 years of business at a perfect 5-star Yelp rating. They had joined an Apple pilot program just 6 months before they were forced to close up shop. I could name others. Why do we need right to repair in Maryland? In the last 12 months, more than 746,000 Marylanders went to iFixit to find repair guides and repair parts to fix their stuff. In a soon-to-be-released survey, 89% of independent repair technicians said that they would be more successful if they had access to repair software from Apple or Samsung. Maryland legislators,
sir?
the ball is now in your court.
Sir, we really need to wrap this
I'm
up.
closing right now, I promise, sir. I apologize. It's the first time doing this first time doing this. Please pass the right to repair legislation. I apologize, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Emily Ranson with Clean Water Action, and we have submitted testimony that many other environmental groups have signed on as well. We're very interested in right to repair legislation in order to give Marylanders the right and option to repair their belongings and extend their usable life. And that reduces the waste that is both landfilled or burned or generated when devices have to simply be purchased new. The right to repair enables consumers to practice the principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle. If Marylanders were able to hold on to our phones for just 1 more year on average, it would reduce the climate pollution equivalent to taking 11,000 cars off the road. And it would have significant savings in our when we're looking at raw mineral use as well. So right to repair enables consumers to keep their belongings working longer and reduces the demand for raw materials, transportation, as well as space. So one of the best ways to reduce this growing issue of electronic waste is to interrupt the market pressures that are forcing all of us to replace products. And instead, if we have widespread and reasonable opportunities to repair and reuse, we can extend their life. So once again, this will allow millions of tons of useful products to remain in use instead of filling landfills, and more impactfully, it will reduce the burden of source material, manufacturing, and transportation of unnecessary new devices. So thank you, and we urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Chairman Davis, Vice Chair Dumais, members of the committee, Steve Sakamoto-Wengel, here on behalf of the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's Office. We're here in support of House Bill 1124. I won't repeat what has been said. I just want to note that when the auto repair market was opened up to independent facilities, it both made it more convenient for consumers to get their automobiles repaired, as well as lowered the cost for consumers. And we believe that the same thing should happen with electronics. So we urge a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Delegate Walker.
Just trying to get the bill a little bit. So this is saying if I've got an iPhone and I don't want to go to Apple to have it repaired, I can go to a private store,
Yes.
private shop, and you all can
Right.
fix it. But at the end of the day, my phone is still, it's on a shelf life. They're only built to last for so long, right? So you all are saying if we pass this bill, then instead of me having to get rid of the phone that day, I may be able to extend the life for a year?
Yeah, or longer. So right now you can take your phone to Apple. There's some repairs that Apple won't even do that independent repair shops can. So I think one of them is the charging port. So if you go into Apple and say, hey, my phone's not charging, they'll say, we don't repair that. You should get a new one. You're up for a free upgrade, and they'll give you a new one, where an independent salesperson could. So what this is doing is making sure that any repair shop has the same tools that an Apple store can, and materials.
So you all can fix a charging port on the phone?
Not me,
So-
but yeah, some other smart folks
Right,
can.
so just to clarify, what this does is it requires the manufacturer to make available at reasonable cost the tools and documentation necessary so that an independent repair shop can fix their products.
So you're asking Apple to say, okay, here's how you fix our phones, right? Because I'm assuming now if we were to do this and we were to use an independent third-party person that's not verified from them, I guess, would that void the warranty? Like a lot of times, if you've got a warranty, if you use an outside entity, then it's gone.
Oh, the intent of this bill is that it would no longer void the warranty. Right now, what Apple might tell you is if you take your iPhone to be repaired anywhere but an Apple store, that's going to void the warranty. And this would allow independent repair shops to get the knowledge and tools they need to also make those repairs without voiding the warranty on your phone.
All right, and you're saying, and you would be able to fix, I think the gentleman on the end said, so the charging port he talked about, you could fix that, right? But
Yes, absolutely.
would
In
it
fact,
be-
you'd
is it
be
more
amazed
costly-
at what can be repaired.
Is it more cost efficient to have it fixed or to have it replaced?
Have it
what you've
fixed,
seen?
absolutely.
And is it-
iPhones go for around $1,000. You can do a charge port repair for $15.
$15?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. And is it just for?
Sounds good, right?
I ain't talking. Now, is this also for, is it just for telephones or is it for, I saw a list of things, but I also saw some things excluded. Is this for televisions and washing machine? Delegate, maybe you'll tell me,
It's-
what does it cover?
Right, it's anything controlled by digital electronics embedded in or attached to the product, right? So we're talking mostly about things that we think of as digital, but there may also be your coffee maker or your refrigerator is actually, there's a digital component.
What about smart televisions?
Yeah.
The only thing it doesn't include is cars.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So that's right where I want to pick this up. The only thing it doesn't include is cars. So large industrial equipment, Caterpillars, big dump trucks, if they have electronics and they have, smart programming for their engines, they don't appear to be exempted in this bill. So you want to include those because most of the testimony is about small disposable consumer electronics. But, okay, big farm equipment. We still have some farms in Howard County. We've got farmers paying.
Yeah, the farmers have been some of the strongest advocates. Yeah, there's actually a second bill that's just on farm
You actually
equipment.
have some strong opposition, too.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Right.
to the bill sponsor, I just want to make sure, your intent, you've limited out motor vehicle manufacturers, but you're leaving a wide swath of stuff in here that is not small disposable consumer electronics.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
This bill, you'll hear a separate bill that's focused specifically on farm equipment. This bill is inclusive of all of that as
But
well.
this bill captures farm equipment and large.
As well.
And the
Yes.
reason cars are exempt, as we said, is because
I'm
they,
just
okay.
talking to the bill sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the question about being able to repair this phone. You want to be able to repair the phone, and if something happens to you're trying to repair it, you want the manufacturer to still warrant it. Is that what you said?
Right, we want the, the manufacturer is going to provide the repair facility with the instructions on what they need to do to be able to repair your phone, and whatever tools they would need to be able to repair your phone. And that should not void the warranty, just as it is with your car. If you take it to Jiffy Lube, get your oil changed, that's not going to void your warranty.
Not necessarily, but if you make a modification to it, if you change, like, I don't know how many of these you've opened up, that repairing a cell phone isn't a $15 issue. I don't know what on the phone could be done for $15. But I look at the size of a motherboard or something on these things, and you're saying you can repair that better than Apple by replacing that motherboard.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. There's two experts in
But
this
you want
room right
Apple
here.
to maintain the warranty after you've done it.
It depends on what the issue is, but yes. There's no reason it shouldn't be, because it is much, I mean, I know electronics look complicated, and motherboards look complicated, but an expert working on a motherboard knows what they're doing.
Can you repair a motherboard?
Yes, or me personally, no.
A six-layer
But they
mother-
can
You
be.
can repair a six-layer motherboard.
Yes, and there are two experts in this room that'll blow you away with what they could do.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, just can you touch on if there's any conflict with federal trademark or any federal laws?
Well, the bill specifically exempts trade secrets, so Apple or another company would not have to provide trade secrets to the repair facilities, so.
Okay, I guess that answers. Thank you.
Excludes trade secrets, well, what about copyright law? I mean, I imagine that some of the information that are on these devices are copyrighted, and there's probably a reason that they wouldn't want a repair person to have access to that underlying information?
We're not asking for all the information, so the information that this bill asks for is the same information that Apple gives to their techs in the store. I don't think they're giving them proprietary information or copyrighted information. All of the federal copyright laws are still intact. We're not asking for the source code or anything like that. They're literally just asking for the same tools that any 23-year-old who works as an Apple genius gets.
That's the actual name of a tech?
That's what they call them, the Apple geniuses, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Now go on.
You had your store, somebody could come into your store and get their iPhone fixed. You had the capability, it seems like, in certain ways
Yes,
to
sir.
fix an iPhone.
Yes,
So
sir.
nothing prevented them from doing that. It was just a matter if they wanted to take a chance with you or not, right?
Well, hopefully they weren't taking a chance. But we actually, and when I first started out, when the iPhone first launched, we actually had referrals from Apple stores to our locations before Apple started doing repair work. So yeah, we had a very good reputation in our markets, and lots of customers came in. What we're seeing now is that Apple, and I hate to pick on them only, but then again I don't, is very restrictive with what they do to repair. They're trying to cut off flow of parts and supplies. They're trying to serialize parts
Sure.
so that a part can't go into a phone. And obviously, they're going to knock down, independent repair as much as they can, which you'll hear from some opposing lobbyists today.
Yeah, and I mean, that's business. I mean, you
Sure,
know,
absolutely.
You can tell, I mean, they don't, so they've got it, they create it, and they want to do it. But I'm trying to see now, I'm almost thinking this bill's getting bigger than what we're talking about now. About, customer repair. Like, this is almost like going after a business model that Apple and Samsung have set in place. Right? I mean, if you want to buy an iPhone, you want their technology they have, then you're going to have to use compatible Apple earbuds, compatible charging stuff. But it kind of that's their business model, what they set in place.
Well, and I think that really gets to the point of recognizing a consumer's right in owning a product and having the right to repair that product.
Yeah, but Delegate, they're not saying you can't go to a store like this to get it fixed. They're just saying, if you want us to still keep our name and behind it and back your product, then use one of our service providers.
Sure. With the serialization of parts, for instance, this is a good example of battery. Okay, a battery is something we've all replaced in our cars, and we've done it easily, right? No problems. In a battery in a phone, though, they're making it now so that it's serialized to go into a specific phone, and it has to have software to sync that. So as an independent repair tech, if I took one iPhone over here and one iPhone over here and tried to swap the batteries, it would give me a warning message. So even though it's an OEM part, it's going to give me a warning message, and I don't have access to that. There's no danger.
That's kind of business, like, when my key, if I have to have my key replaced, I have to get it linked in, so I got to pay $300 for a key. I don't like it if I lose it, but, it's a key, it's a sync, and I'm sure, Delegate Wilson, he's got a Tesla. So I'm sure getting a Tesla battery replaced is going to be it's kind of.
And with respect, Delegate, a key is obviously a security concern. A battery is a thing that makes your device go. So just like putting gas in your car, if you had to pay $300 to get a license to put gas in your car, you probably would not like that car.
So maybe I'll get a Tesla like CT.
I'm going to go on to the next panel.
Thank you, Mr.
Jessa Jones, Louis Rossman, I. Bowie Hall, Maxwell Block, and Matt Fisher.
Do a competition fixing a 6-layer motherboard?
Yeah,
See, you can do it
why
first.
don't we just cancel this and we'll fix the motherboard right here?
I'll take that challenge. This will be fun.
Is this our full panel?
All right, so I'll start. So my name is Louis Rossman. I run a company called Rossman Repair Group in New York. I don't do business in Baltimore, but I've had about $38,000 of business sent to me from customers in Baltimore over the past year and a half. So there seems to be an interest in repair here. What this bill is about is the ability to fix your own stuff. So just to give you an idea of where we're coming from, about 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, when you bought a computer, appliances, they would come with schematics and diagrams if you opened it. If it didn't, you could contact the manufacturer and get access to it. Today, you can't do that, and even if you're an authorized repair center of the manufacturer, you're not allowed access to parts to do your job, even if you do go through all their training, and I included that in the testimony that I provided. There's one chip that goes into one of the newer machines, and it was a charging chip, so that it would charge the battery and allow the machine to turn on. I used to be able to buy this chip for $5 or $10 if I just go to Mouser or DigiKey. What Apple did is they changed the address of the charge chip on this off-the-shelf part and then told the company, Intersil, don't sell this chip to anybody else. If you go to the Apple store to get this device fixed, they will charge you $1,500 if that chip has failed, and none of us are able to buy that chip. If your data is stuck on that device, that means your data is gone. Apple doesn't offer data recovery as a service, so even if you wanted your data recovered, you have no option. And it doesn't mean that we can't. Now, one of you asked, they're not trying to stop you from doing your job. You can still go to an independent. You can, but what that's done is it's criminalized the process of me doing my job. I still get access to that chip. I can't tell you how, but I do. And I just find it strange that I grew up in a culture where buying marijuana was illegal and fixing your devices was, but now getting the chip to fix a MacBook is illegal and you can obtain marijuana. I just find it strange how that part of the culture has changed over the years. There was also one question about warranty, which is, does this mean that if someone brings a product to the store after having it messed up at an independent repair shop, that's still covered under warranty? And no, if a repair center messes up something, the manufacturer could point to it and say, they messed this up, that's not covered under warranty anymore. This bill doesn't affect that Magnuson-Moss Act at all.
All right, I'll go next. Hi, my name is Jessa Jones, and I grew up in Maryland, and I went to College Park, and then I went to grad school at Hopkins. And then since then, I've been living in Rochester for the last 20 years, so I came for this special trip just because this bill is so important to me. I run a repair shop where we do micro-soldering of motherboards in iPhones, mostly for the purpose of data recovery. Because the iPhone is so secure, the only way to get those pictures out of that phone when it goes in the toilet or the washing machine is to fix the motherboard and get it to turn back on. Now, there's a couple things that I really want you guys to know. Number one is that you're going to hear that the consumers have plenty of options for authorized repair, and that's not really true. Authorized repair is manufacturer-controlled repair, which is another word for sales. And if you just think about it, like if you have an iPad and you go to the Apple store with a cracked screen, guess what your options are? Buy a new one. That's it. Apple doesn't repair a simple cracked screen. They don't repair a charge port. They don't repair a headphone jack. They don't fix cameras. It's really, really limited to just screens and batteries. That's the only thing you have an option for. When I was back here, I got here I had to fly at 4:30 in the morning, and when I got here, one of the pages helped me with this map, which I thought was really cool. This was his idea to show you guys. Look here in pink. 1, 2, 3, Bethesda, 4, Bethesda, 5. That's your Apple stores, your authorized Apple stores here in Maryland. I grew up down here on the Eastern Shore in Snow Hill. I'd have to take a day off of work and drive all the way, even to get to the place that can only do a screen or battery for me that can't really fix the device. The other thing that I want you to know is that we can fix a lot of stuff. I can fix your charge port. But that is going away, and I'm seeing that. You just heard Rob tell you an example. Today, if I put a battery from Lewis's iPhone into my iPhone will lose a function because that battery serial number is married to the device that only Apple can reprogram it. That's what we're asking for. That's why I love the Maryland bill, because it includes that. Just give us access to the same little dongles that reprogram and say, fine, this serial number, now that's your charge port, go. And let us do what we've been doing. And I loved how you guys responded to the robocall thing. It made me want to move back to Maryland. Who's next?
Thank you. I'm here with unallocated space. It's a 501c3 makerspace out of Severn, Maryland. I am an electronics technician with 20 years of experience in the field. I work with this makerspace to teach people how to repair their own toys, cell phones, whatever electronics comes through the door. We'll sit down, work with them, and teach them how to do these repairs. They're not all that simple. A certification in this field is certainly useful for a manufacturer point of view, but when you get right down to it, learning these skills takes a lot of time and effort through study, through getting a whole bunch of equipment together and getting a literacy in what it is to actually speak and work with technology. When you take these things and you try to actually leverage them, that's when you get into real trouble. There are people in Shenzhen, China that can take parts off of street vendors and assemble their own cell phone relatively commonly and reliably. The same process can happen here. We have very smart people, but we are rendered artificially ignorant of how to speak this language due to various, not very, how to put it, disruptive trade practice, where all we need to do is take the contents of a chip off the chip, replace the chip, and put it back on. We haven't done anything to security or anything else. We're just fixing the phone. But using copyright, they have tried to cinch this down. I would propose that right to repair is very similar to fair use. Give us educational fair use to access these resources, to be able to learn from them, and maybe we can finally catch up and we don't have to know how to use technology, we can really understand it. Thank you for your time.
My name is Maxwell Block. I'm a resident of Catonsville, Maryland. Grew up there on Miller Avenue down the street from an independent repair store called JBS Electronics. Being able to visit it in walking distance definitely grew my interest in technology. I don't repair devices. I work in technology, but it's software, so I depend on the use of a laptop, but I don't really know what goes on inside of it. But I do count on there being a number of independent repair stores available for me to choose from to take my business to. So I've heard a lot of things from people here who are independent repair providers saying that their jobs are becoming much, much, much harder. And this echoes sentiments that I heard from this local Catonsville business about being able to repair TVs, VCRs, and stereos as the supply chains got harder and harder to do. So just a couple of comments here. My main concern, and I took some time off of work today, affecting my income today to come down here and address this committee, because ultimately this affects my ability to choose independent repair providers and affects my wallet as well. I've heard about warranty, and I'd like to maintain the choice to speak to these independent businesses and say, hey, you can give me a free estimate. And if they have access to the tools and documentation needed to do the job, they can provide me that estimate. If they no longer have access to the tools and documentation to do that job, they have to throw their hands up and say, I'm sorry, I can't fix this. You have to take it somewhere else. But I'd really like to depend on my ability to continue to choose these businesses that I've built a relationship with over the years. So at the end of the day, for me, it's about cost, common sense, and competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the business owners, thanks for taking time out of the day to come up and visit. I'm a small business owner as well, and it's worth it for you to come up and testify. Is this primarily an iPhone issue? It's cell phones, and now it's a subset of iPhone. Are they the offender for which you're trying to pass a bill?
This is something that affects almost every industry at this point. So, I mean, Nikon just recently got rid of their repair program. Many companies are doing the exact same thing. I work exclusively on Apple products, so I can speak best to what they're doing specifically, and they're one of the worst offenders. However, many other companies are copying what they're doing in many different fields. That's why, as she was saying before, that this is even something that's been affecting farm equipment and tractors. I was very surprised when I went to testify on behalf of this in Nebraska that there were farmers there showing up. I didn't know that they had the exact same problems that we did until I had met them.
So the reason why I ask about the iPhone is I've got a Motorola, and literally they have on their repair line here that there's actually a fix-it-yourself option. I mean, they're showing you how to go about fixing your phone yourself, and also sending it to third-party providers. So it seems like each manufacturer is deciding for themselves the approach that they'd like to take, and I'm not sure I don't think I would disagree with that approach. If a customer buys an Apple product, I think there's a certain expectation. I know when I have an iPad, and so it is difficult sometimes to do business with Apple, but you just kind of know that, right?
Can I respond
As opposed to my son, who built a computer himself and was able to pull parts and literally rebuild a computer, right? So we're talking about the same sort of thing. There are things for which we buy and pay a premium for, and when it goes wrong, it's costly enough where I want it fixed, right, and sending it back to the manufacturer appears to be an approach. And then there are things that perhaps have a different approach, and consumers know that when they're buying up front, don't you think?
Now, let's say for the Motorola example, they actually do have a program for selling parts, but they don't have an access for, let's say, schematics and other areas that we would need if we were to do, let's say, data recovery on those products or board repair on those products. So they are most certainly better than the other manufacturers, but they still do take certain elements from other companies that have anti-repair policies. I wouldn't say they're as bad as Apple, but there are definitely things that could be done better, and that this would apply to many other companies besides just, let's say, Apple and Samsung and John Deere.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, would you
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for your testimony. I think this is an interesting bill. I just want to get a sense. I thought I heard the sponsor say that there's no legislation in any other state that does this, though. Is that different, or you do this someplace in other states? I know you all are from other areas. Is there some sort of right to repair in New York or other places?
Yes, we've been going to hearings like this for a long time because it requires a lot of thought, because there's a lot of misconception. I think that even this guy, if he buys an iPad, expects that if his kid cracks it, that he can go back to the Apple store and they'll fix it, but they won't. And that's a surprise.
So there's legislation in these other states?
There's legislation in multiple states. Nothing has ever come to a floor vote ever in any of these states.
So there's no past legislation in any states?
That's right. There's all this pending legislation that everybody's been
Thank
talking
you.
about for a while.
I guess I'll go ahead and ask it. I was just thinking that because the technology advances so rapidly, oftentimes is it worth it to repair, like an iPhone or something like that, because you know, it's almost at warp speed, the advancements.
Well, I sure think so. I've fixed 10,000 iPhones, and I think that the consumer deserves to make that decision themselves. So really, it's just about whether or not a consumer can get it fixed affordably, and you really can. If the very limited authorized repair, AKA sales that there is often not economically feasible, which is part of why we don't think about it. If you go to the Apple store and they quote you a repair that's the same as the phone price, you don't think it's repairable. And you don't know that if you go down to the street, they can fix it for a really affordable price. But that depends on you being able to, me taking a part out, put the same part back in and have that device still turn on and not go, whoa, you don't have the right serial number, I'm dead now. And that's what we're asking for your help. Just let us keep doing what we've been doing and let consumers make the choice. Just say no to software locks and serialization and pairing so that we don't want to lose the ability. I mean, I have a team of 6 stay-at-home moms that work in my shop that I support. This is their job. And we fix phones all day, every day. And people love it. And so, yeah, I think you can fix phones and make sense.
I love it when you talk technically. Serialization pairing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo my colleagues' sentiment in appreciating all the business owners for taking time to appear in front of us. I think this is a growing concern nationally, that we all admit this is not a consumer-friendly trend that we are seeing, because we're fighting against a monopoly, essentially, if not in at least one of the few big players. So given that there has been no past state-level legislation, I wonder if this is a national issue that needs to be addressed with some other entities. And on that front, my question is there some kind of association representing the dying breed of small-time repair shops that actually want to help customers fix up their appliances instead of having to go to, this Apple, let's say, whatever, big player who can be arrogant about this and say, yeah, I know, I represent Montgomery County. There are only 2 Apple shops, and they're both in Bethesda within a couple of miles, and people living in Clarksburg, Germantown County just have to commute, So how do we fight back against that? I don't have an answer, but are there advocacy groups representing you guys? That's my question.
So I'd like to address your question, if I may. I'm in Delegate Feldmark's district, and am really proud to see this bill in front of this committee today. And I'm here urging a favorable report, because without other states having passed legislation, I'd certainly be really proud if Maryland would become a leader in this respect. Personally, I don't know if there are industry groups, but because, as you mentioned, this is a growing trend, I'm certainly going to be looking for coalitions and groups to join and amplify my voice if it's required. But hopefully in Maryland, we don't need to let that take very long.
There's also the Repair Association at repair.org that represents most repair people that are in favor of this type of legislation, but most of it is just decentralized. So, her and I have YouTube channels where we just talk into a camera and show ourselves fixing devices, fixing motherboards, and, she's amassed, I think, 140,000. I have 1.1 million people watching that just listen to this type of stuff. So outside of the Repair Association, it's mostly decentralized support from individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here. Are there any companies that have actually provide this information to you today?
There's no company that's provided this type of information or support in any kind.
Okay, and you mentioned you do 10,000 of these repairs.
Yes.
And my biggest question comes when you start looking at the screens and all the stuff that we're talking about that most of us actually break.
Yep.
You can still do that. Nobody's stopping you from doing any of the screen repairs.
No, I have to buy those screens when they fall off a truck in China.
Okay, but that's the same way every one of you have to do it. But you're still able to repair my iPhone, my Motorola, my Samsung.
Right now today, if you came to me with a cracked screen, I'd say, what device? And if it's an iPhone 6, then sure, I can replace it. If it's an iPhone 11, that device has a new software lock, and it's going to wake up and say,
okay, but
I
you-
don't
okay,
recognize
got
that
you.
screen. You're going to lose
I
some
got you.
function.
But you're expecting Apple to give you trade secrets? to do
No,
that.
I'm not expecting any kind of trade secrets. I'm expecting a dongle that says, plug it in. Now that's your new screen. Done. I don't need to know what's in the dongle. I don't need to know how it works.
So whatever that dongle is, they have to do something different at their end to make you able to do that?
No, not really. If I went, I'm Apple certified, by the way, but I'm not Apple authorized, so I don't have access, even though I'm certified by Apple, to their existing dongle.
My last question was,
Yep.
do any of you repair the motherboard?
Yes, all day, every day.
You repair the inner workings of motherboard?
Absolutely.
6 to 10 layers.
Smash that like button and you can watch us do
We
it
live
live.
stream it every day.
Well, I'm going to have to get on your website. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for your time, guys. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Cape Bryman, Brian Byrne, Andrew Rogers, Samuel Mensimer, and Chloe Hemansky.
The other person that was called is out sick today. So I guess it's just us. Go? Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Andrew Rogers. I'm a Maryland resident. I come here from Linthicum Heights, Maryland, near Baltimore. I also am a member of Unallocated Space, and I'm a computer engineer that works for a small contractor in Burtonsville, Maryland, doing embedded software and data analytics. Right to repair is very important to me because, you know, as an owner of many of these devices, I would like to continue to be able to repair them. I've been repairing my own devices since I was in about 6th grade, right? It's not because you were still able to do so. This was before all these lockouts came in these things. I had an Apple iBook, and back before they started screwing over their customers, I used to be able to take like a part and replace it. But you know, now it's getting harder to do that every passing day. I've also had when I was in between computer jobs, when I was still finding my way, you know, trying to break into the industry and get what some might call a real job. I was working at a package handling facility for UPS, making ends meet, and my LG phone fell out of my pocket, and it shattered, and the screen was just completely broken. But because I was able to get the part for like $40, I was able to myself with just a few pictures online, was able to do the repair and slap it in myself with no. And I'm not professionally trained like electrical engineer or anything. I'm still going back to school to finish my classes while I'm working full time. Yeah, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hello, my name is Sam Mensimer. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior in high school. I have run an electronics repair business in Washington, D.C. since I was 12. I'm here today because right to repair is very important to ensuring the longevity of our electronics as they become a bigger part of our lives. I believe Jessa and the other panel mentioned the software locks that Apple's been putting in place on the batteries on the iPhone 11s and the newer models. Apple, I actually have a quote here from Apple that they responded to this saying, it's unsafe for people other than Apple authorized service providers to replace their batteries. I've been replacing batteries in iPhones since I was 12. I'm still here today. Got an iPhone right here. You can just pull there's some screws in here. You take the screen off, you pull some tabs out, and the battery comes out. I don't see how that's unsafe. They also, many manufacturers, like they mentioned before, they won't give us electrical schematics. They say it's like an intellectual property issue, and giving us access to that information would compromise their intellectual property. I don't really think that's a valid argument. I can make that schematic if I look at the device and go around for several hours with a multimeter probing around figuring out where stuff goes. Also, a lot of companies have shown that that's not an intellectual property issue. This is an electrical schematic that I found tucked into the bottom of my Bosch dishwasher while I was fixing some electrical wires the other day after a rat chewed through them. So this piece of paper helped me fix that dishwasher with an 80-cent piece of wire and a $20 drain hose, as opposed to paying the $450 that we were quoted by the Bosch factory service technician. If I were able to get parts or schematics like this for things like this, I also repair motherboards. Jessa taught me how to repair motherboards. I went to her class. If I were able to get those schematics for an iPhone like this, I would be able to keep hundreds more devices out of a landfill and keep consumers from having to spend thousands of dollars on new devices. I encourage a favorable report, and I thank you for your time.
So this panel? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.
Could I also add, I would also like a favorable report. About to say that.
All right, thank you all very much. That concludes the testimony of the proponents. We will now move to the opposition. Catherine Gunter, Ben Gallette, John Favaza.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. John Favaza with Manus Canyon and Associates. I'm here today on behalf of the Entertainment Software Association. I'm not sure I can be as compelling as the last group that was at the panel. They were very good. The Entertainment Software Association, we are basically, you've heard a lot about phones, right? We've heard a lot of talk about iPhones and iPhones. We are video game console manufacturers. We are video game developers. So we're in a little bit of a different business, and we're included in this bill also. You've heard there's two critical parts for us to be successful, right? One, we've heard about consumers. Well, obviously, we don't exist without our consumers. The gaming community is a very, very passionate group of people. They are a very vocal group of people, and when they're not happy, we hear about it. So it's in our interest to be responsive to them. It's in our interest to provide them with the best possible products and service that we can, and we believe we do that. And the second part, we also don't exist without protecting our intellectual property, our content. And this bill is a direct threat at that content. We've heard about small business. We all support small businesses. Well, guess what? We have a hub of developers that have been in Hunt Valley in Baltimore County for over 30 years. In a lot of cases, startup software developers. And all they have is their intellectual property and their content. That is their company. So they don't exist if they don't have those protections. One final thing I'll add before I turn it over to Catherine and Ben from ESA. There was a comment earlier about trade secrets and that sort of thing and them being exempt. That's exempt in this bill. This bill doesn't require that. This bill actually explicitly requires trade secrets to be turned over. If you look on page 4 of the bill, except as necessary to comply with the terms of the subtitle, you can't require somebody to divulge its trade secret. So that's an explicit requirement that to comply with the bill, we do have to turn them over. So I just wanted to clarify that point for the committee, and with that, I'll turn it over to Catherine and Ben, who have far more expertise than I do. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much. Good afternoon, committee and vice chair. My name is Catherine Gunter, and I'm with the Entertainment Software Association. I just wanted to quickly kind of speak to this bill. It's been discussed as, fixing screens, and it's an Apple problem. We represent the video game industry, as John said, and in our view, this is not just a screen-fixing bill. This is the mandate of intellectual property to unauthorized repair shops. People who play video games represent a very diverse cross-section of the United States. So we have every age and gender, and as John mentioned, we have over 40 companies that are based here, including one of ESA's largest members, Bethesda. We've also heard that, repairs are more expensive. Our companies take it upon themselves to get their repairs fixed as quickly and affordably as possible so we can get our consoles back in the working hands of our players that are working in the same way that they bought them. These are very expensive machines, and we want to make sure that when repairs are done, they're done with a level of specificity and technicality where nothing can go wrong. There's a lot of parts that talk to each other, as has been said before, and that's done to protect the copyrighted products that are inside of our secure platforms. Ben Gallant, one of my colleagues, will speak specifically to the IP questions and the federal law that we discussed earlier, but I just wanted to emphasize that as an industry, we really oppose the digital right to repair. And I'll yield the remaining time to Ben.
Well, thank you. My name is Ben Golant, and I appreciate being before you today. I'm the Chief Counsel for Intellectual Property Policy at ESA, and I just want to stress how important copyright law is to our members. Without copyright law, there would be no businesses in the video game business. And copyright law is important in this particular context because content protection is critical to prevent piracy. And we're concerned that this bill that would allow or prevent, or I should say, share information with others would somehow cause more piracy to occur because you're providing the technical know-how to unlock these digital locks that prevent piracy on these particular consoles. More important, we talked a lot about trade secrets, talked about trademarks, but it really is copyright. And copyright is a federal law. And in fact, when the issue of repair came before the Copyright Office in 2018, the Copyright Office said that of all the electronics out there, the importance of content protection for video game consoles is more than anything else. And so they had an exemption for us that said that there's no need for repair for consoles because the underlying content and the content protection tools under Section 1201 of the DMCA protect that particular content, and federal law abides. And in fact, it's important to point out that in Section 1201A2 of the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, it says, no person shall manufacture, import, offer to the public, provide, or otherwise traffic in any technology, product, service, device, component, or part thereof. So there's an anti-trafficking provision in federal law in which would provide a conflict if Maryland decided to have this bill before it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. My name is Alan Schaefer. I'm Executive Director of the Diesel Technology Forum. We're a not-for-profit educational organization headquartered in Frederick, Maryland, established in the year 2000. Over the last 2 decades, we've spent a lot of time here in Annapolis and working with the Maryland Department of the Environment, supporting regulations and initiatives to reduce in-use diesel emissions from all kinds of machines and equipment. Just 2 years ago, we were here in Annapolis in support of since-enacted legislation from then-Delegate, now Senator Clarence Lamb, to establish higher fines and penalties for those found to be emitting excessive exhaust emissions from pickup trucks, a practice known as rolling coal. I'm here today to express my opposition to House Bill 1124 because if it's enacted, it will make Maryland's air dirtier, not cleaner. It will jeopardize heavy equipment safety, both for farmers, service technicians, and the general public that share the roads, and facilitate a practice that is potentially in violation of the Federal Clean Air Act. Now, diesel engines power almost all farm equipment today because they are efficient, powerful, durable, reliable, and now near zero emissions. They are near zero emissions because manufacturers have invested billions of dollars to develop advanced emissions control systems that are all controlled by engine management computers. It includes exhaust after-treatment systems that require periodic maintenance and replenishment of certain kinds of fluids. And this practice of right to repair opens up the blueprints and frankly, Pandora's box for increasing emissions from this kind of machines and equipment across all applications. It's true that illegal tampering is happening now, but this practice of right to repair would hand over the keys to the car and make it happen a lot worse in the future. So for anyone who cares about the Chesapeake Bay and water quality, and I was surprised to hear some of the previous testimony from the clean water groups, this could potentially increase emissions of nitrogen oxide, which we all know is what we don't want for the Bay. We don't want that for clean air in Montgomery County, and we don't want it for Maryland's air quality compliance. There's also the safety factor, which is quite high, and I don't think anyone driving home tonight that might have to pass a tractor on a back road would want to see a part fly off of that, or suddenly the machine become disabled or catch fire because someone improperly tampered with those emissions controls. So for all those reasons and others, we encourage your support, unfavorable report on HB 1124.
Yes. Hi, my name is Larry Albert. I'm the Director for Product Safety Compliance and Standards for the Power Tool Group of Stanley Black & Decker, which is located in Towson, Maryland. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee today on this important topic. I'm here to speak against HB 1124, which we believe puts the consumer at risk of injury rather than protecting them. Black & Decker has had a presence in Maryland for over 100 years, has over 2,000 employees working in Maryland, and it is still headquartered, and the Power Tool Group is still headquartered in Towson. We design, build, and sell power tools and electric outdoor power equipment worldwide. We are members of trade associations, Power Tool Institute and the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute, both of which, as we do, stress the importance of product safety in all of our actions. There's a huge amount of effort put into ensuring that all power tools and related equipment are safe, and that has always been the case through all different types of technology. Nowadays, most of modern power tools and outdoor power equipment use embedded microcontrollers, which utilize software to control their operation. Manipulation of the software, changing the electronics, can influence the safety of these tools to the effect that people could be injured when using a power tool that's been modified in such a way. We firmly support the principle of repair, which means to us bringing the tool back to its original operating condition. We oppose the actions of this bill, which would open the access to electronics, schematics, and software that would permit people to make changes to the operational code and circuitry that would influence the safety of these power tools and put operators at risk of injury. It is true that tampering is always taking place with power tools. People take guards off and people modify other kinds of aspects of the tool, but these are fairly obvious types of changes so that people that are about to use a power tool that's been modified in that way, in a physical way, are aware of the change that's taken place, the risk they're incurring. The kinds of changes that were proposed that could occur as a result of the proposed bill would make it such that software could be modified in such a way as to make a tool that was running at a certain speed now run much faster and cause, for example, grinding wheels to fly apart, causing injury. These are more insidious types of changes that are not obvious to the user of the tool. I urge you to deliver an unfavorable report on HB 1124. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm was listening to the previous panel, trying to read through some of the both proponents and opponents' testimony, and I think there's this issue around the cars, and I understand that issue has sort of been addressed through an MOU procedure instead of legislation, but it seems to me that it's analogous, these two gentlemen here, to this idea of a very technically complex, potentially dangerous, it's driving down the street, we don't want brakes flying off. And yet we seem to have a solution that works. And so I'm wondering, is it the concept of having this kind of a solution that works, of having independent repair shops that you're opposed to, or is it some specifics that are in the bill that we might be able to modify so that it would better mirror what has been very successful in the context of car repair?
Manufacturers have a working understanding right now of the way to address that question specifically. I think another panel coming up may speak to that more more specifically.
So you
Starting
mean that question being like, how could we mirror what's done with car repair in these other areas? Is that what
ways
you're
to
saying?
address the concerns about safety and excess emissions from farm and industrial equipment.
So I guess my question is, because we also have emissions standards for cars, right? And
But that was
having
treated, that was a separate MOU, right?
So my question is, what is it that we can learn, if this bill, it sounds like you're saying is flawed, I'm not sure I agree with that, but if that's what you're saying, then what is it we could do that takes what's working well with independent car repair and apply it to this broader set of items that we're talking about here? And it might be different for different ones, but specifically in this case, you're saying you're worried about emissions, you're saying worried about safety. We have those same problems potentially with cars, and we've solved it. We've got a good solution. So what is it we would need to do to take that same solution and apply it for the heavier machinery, the farm equipment, the whatever it is that you're concerned this doesn't work?
I think industry would be happy to work with you, and we have language that might help address some of those concerns.
That would allow for independent repair?
Manufacturers of farm equipment have agreed, starting in January of next year, to provide access to their machines and equipment in terms of the electronics and also an understanding of some of that software so that there can be that kind of operation done. But I would recommend that that question be addressed to the subsequent panels of manufacturers directly. They would be best qualified to answer your question, I'm saying.
Okay. And what about the other heavy equipment that you're talking about, that you're saying the safety concerns? And again, I'm saying that cars are pretty heavy equipment.
Right.
With potential safety
So these are
concerns.
essentially power tools and outdoor power equipment, which are, have safety implications just because they have moving blades and things of that nature. We do, and most of the members of the industry currently provide assemblies that are available to owners of products to replace assemblies that are faulty in their equipment. So they can bring their equipment back up to original operational condition. We do not, however, provide schematics, software, source code, and so on, right? That level of granularity.
That's done with cars. The stuff that is done and is effective with independent car repair. That's the stuff you don't supply? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think most of this is not providing access to the internal software, for example, that's operating in the tool, such that the tool could be altered in its operation by someone who were to change that software. That's really the objection.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I heard some of the terms intellectual property and copyright, but from some of the testimony that I heard, it seems like these independent operations just kind of want to have access to the parts and know how to replace these parts. Am I missing something with that?
Well, according to the bill, it looks as if that source code and other digital tools necessary to fix a particular machine, a video game console, would be required. So a video game console manufacturer would have to give those tools and schematics and the underlying know-how, how the code works, to an unauthorized repair person. And because of that, it leads to the fact that it breaks the chain of trust that we as an industry have with authorized repair people. We certainly know that repair people are honest, but there just needs to be one person who would take the code and then open up the machine and allow all illegally copied video games to be played on that particular console.
So why would you need a code to change a battery in a cell phone? Like why does the iPhone 6 that I had, why can I change that battery but can't in my iPhone 8? Like, why is a code needed to change the battery?
That you'll have to ask Apple. We're here to represent the video game console industry and not the cell phone industry, so they probably know better than we do.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I do agree with you, gentlemen. I do think the bill is pretty broad, but when you look at it in the context of the last speakers, one of the things Maryland's done is put a lot of investment into maker spaces and things like that to try to incubate, like we saw these two young men come up here and talk. John, maybe you guys can specifically talk to. I mean, how does that square with what Maryland's trying to do as far as these and again, I do think that there needs to be some bifurcation on safety equipment and versus data DRAS or data disaster recovery services. But at the same time, I mean, the crux of a lot of the previous testimony was general small repairs. And to Delegate Jackson's question, I mean, it's about money, but the end of the day, I agree. I'm not really following from A to B how we're getting into intellectual property and semiconductor design and motherboard layering when we're talking about syncing batteries and screens. So based on, and I know that question's a little bit all over the place, but at the end of the day, I mean, Maryland spent a lot of money and putting a lot of time and effort into trying to foster some small businesses like this. I don't see how this is replacing a controller to a PlayStation, a knob on a controller to a PlayStation is somehow encroaching on the intellectual property of Sony.
So to get to the question about, again, what small businesses are we trying to foster in the state of Maryland? I just hope the committee doesn't overlook the small businesses in Maryland and medium-sized businesses and even some now large-sized businesses in the state of Maryland that are in this industry. They matter too, right?
Definitely.
The software developer, who grew up in Baltimore County and now has his own, video game operation in Hunt Valley. He matters too. We're trying to foster that type of economic development in the state of Maryland. I mean, these are very high-paying. These are $80,000 to $100,000 paying jobs.
I agree, but what I'm hearing is repairing, recharging docking stations for phones and screens and things like that. I don't see how this is getting into major software development, intellectual property on major software development.
I mean, I'll let Ben get into the details of that. Again, we're not making cell phones. These are, different types of things. And to Ben's point, I mean, it really hurts the small software developer that is based in Baltimore County, who someone unlocks this machine, his game's going to potentially be pirated. There's going to be unauthorized copy of it. The machine has a built-in redundancy to help prevent the pirated game from being played in the machine. So that's where this small business guy in Maryland that we're trying to foster, that's his connection to this bill, his or her connection to this bill, and it's real. But I'll defer to Ben on more technical questions because that's why he's
fine.
here. So thanks,
Take a
Delegate.
stab at it very quickly. That'd be great.
Thank you, Delegate. So let me just explain it in brief as I can. So copyright law protects video games because...
When were those laws written?
Excuse me?
When was the copyright laws written?
1976.
Okay.
That was the update
Probably been a little bit of an evolution of electronic devices since
And it's been updated in 1998 with the DMCA.
Okay, good. Okay.
And Congress is now looking at the law again in toto to see what
Okay.
needs to be done to reform it.
So back to your original point when it
So
was...
copyright law protects video games because video games is a copyrighted content under Title 17 of the United States Code. When you have a video game in a console, it's also protected by what we call digital rights management or technological protection measures. And that is protected by Section 1201 of the DMCA. It makes it illegal to circumvent the technological protection measures to get access to the underlying copyrighted work. So what this bill would do was...
But are these folks talking about that? I mean, I certainly didn't.
Well, what the bill would do is to defeat the anti-circumvention provisions of Section 1201 by forcing manufacturers to share the software code that would be required to fix it. So when you have that jump, so you have the copyright that's protected by law, then you have the access system protected by law, and then if you somehow force a console manufacturer to share the data that protects the underlying content from piracy, then you have a conflict in law.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
This is a really kind of all over the place bill and all over the place testimony because I find it ironic that we went from battery repair to source code and all in the same one, and that somehow one has lead to the other. And if I want to change your battery, I need your source code. I need everything that you know, and I understand what intellectual property is. And I want to make sure that there's understood that this is people's blood, sweat, and tears. People do things a certain way. Those two young men that were up here testifying before, if they end up creating a special way to access something, they're going to want that copyrighted. And they're not going to tell anybody about it because that's their blood, sweat, and investment. My question is, isn't it a great leap from replacing a battery, which you heard the good delegate talk about, in source code? That you do you need source code in order to replace a battery?
Well, let me, I appreciate your question, Delegate. So let's try to separate this out for a moment. We had two previous panels that talked about Apple and iPhones and cracked screens and batteries and the like.
Right.
We're talking about video game consoles.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Right.
That's my whole point, sir. This isn't just about, this bill doesn't just cover small cracked screens and batteries. It's talking about schematics.
Yes.
It's talking about you tell me exactly how everything that you've done and sweated over for the last 20 years works so I can do it myself. Correct?
That is what the repair people say, and we say in opposition that it would create a uneven playing field because it would promote piracy of video games.
I totally understand. I was going to get into that about piracy, about creating of viruses, because, you know, contrary to popular belief, viruses don't just pop up. Some bad guy's out there creating them, and he does it because he has access to source code, things of that nature, to mess up your electronics. But I was just concerned because, again, we were talking about farm equipment. The over-encompassing nature of this bill is that we're talking about video games and farm equipment and iPhone screens.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, what I've understood is the customer has a choice. If I don't like the fact that I can't, I don't know, get an iPhone with an SD card, I don't buy an iPhone. So I want to make sure it's understood that this isn't just, you don't need a source code to change a battery or a screen. What they're asking for is basically the moon on a popsicle stick in everybody's intellectual property so they can decide what they want to do. And I just think it's a little overbroad. Isn't that so?
I agree.
And kind of following up on that, the way the works that we're talking about being undone, I guess, by this legislation, they're protected, copyrighted works.
Correct.
So they're federally protected by the
Yes.
federal copyright law.
Correct.
Does the state of Maryland, does the legislature have the authority to say those works are no longer copyrighted within Maryland? Because of the supremacy clause, wouldn't that?
That's absolutely right, that federal law preempts state law that occupies the field.
Right. And so we're into a very complicated area. I've got a little bit of experience with it. And copyright law, can you just briefly explain what is the fundamental principle of copyright law and maybe compare that very quickly to patent law?
Right, so the whole purpose of copyright law is to promote creativity and innovation. It empowers creators to make what they want to make, whether it be books, movies, video games, or computer software. It provides them an incentive, a financial incentive to do so, because there are protections afforded to copyrighted content under Title 17 of the United States Code. It's different from patents, which talks about inventions. We're talking about creativity and the process of making a particular video game in this case.
Right.
So,
hence the works, right? Correct?
exactly right. And so both patents and copyright are federal law, and for that reason, it's difficult for any state to intervene itself into that. Trade secrets are entirely separate contexts. States have the right under federal law to do exactly that, to provide their own trade secrets. But we're not talking about the 7-Up formula or Colonel Sanders' recipe. We're talking about the creative output of members like Bethesda that make Doom and several other great games that we have in our portfolio.
And in order to get a copyright, you have to file and go through a process to get that work protected, correct?
Well, it's partly, if you want to have the provisions of the Copyright Act protect you, you have to register your work. But as long as you put your idea into a tangible form of expression, be it software, you have a copyright. Right. It's just a matter of when you register it, you're able to sue for any person who infringes upon your copyright. So then there's two different levels there.
So as the holder, you own that. That is, that is personal property to the holder of that copyright.
Exactly.
And then to say that that copyright does not apply here would be the essence of saying you no longer own that property.
Right.
Thank you.
Chair, so first, I'm less concerned about polluting the air and these two gentlemen. I'm more concerned about video games, technology, et cetera. So the code to fix the console is different than the code of the content of the game itself, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm kind of reading through the bill, and I'm on page 3, line 17, and it says, this subtitle only applies to documentation, parts, tools, or updates required for the diagnosis, manufacture, or repair of digital electronic equipment. And then it lists a whole bunch of stuff that it's exempted. And then if you go down to page 4, this subtitle may not be construed to, except as necessary to comply with the terms of the subtitle, require an original equipment manufacturer to divulge a trade secret or interfere with or alter an agreement between an authorized repair provider and an original equipment manufacturer. Kind of seems like the trade secret is exempt.
Well, that's exactly, it could be. Trade secret is a state law matter, but we're talking about copyright, which is entirely separate from trade secrets. Copyright being a federal law that protects creative content versus trade secrets, which is the underlying secret of a particular business.
Well, what if we narrowed the bill and made them license and sign NDAs? Would that be okay?
Well, you're still going to have issues with regard to those people who would take the so-called right to repair upon themselves and then somehow open up machines on the side, not necessarily for repair, and this is the concern of our members, but for the point of having that machine be able to play illegally copied games. And so even if there's an NDA in place with regard to how it's being fixed, there's no guarantee that someone would not go about and use that particular power of the law, if this bill was passed, to do other things that were not part of what was initially for it to be.
But then they would be subjected to penalties under the NDA, correct? I mean, if we went that route, there would still be penalties attached to it if you broke or violated the law.
Well, that's true, and you bring up a really great point. This is all about, this whole entire discussion is about trust and accountability. When a video game company wants to have their consoles repaired, they contract with those people who they trust to do it the right way, and they also want accountability, which means if they didn't do it the right way, then they have some ways under the law to have a remedy.
I guess. I mean, as somebody that's sitting here with a cracked iPhone screen, and I've gone into Apple, they literally won't fix it. So I mean, like that is a valid concern that people are bringing up. And I only know that because I'm sitting here with it.
No, and that is indeed a valid concern, but we have to do apples and oranges here, that the content that's protected by federal copyright law in a video game system is entirely different than a cracked glass, which has no copyright protection.
And I got you, and we're kind of all over the map here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Was apples and oranges an intentional pun? You know, anytime we have hearings like this where I can tell that the bill is sort of reaching, is they're looking for an enforcement mechanism. So in this case, it's the Attorney General under their Unfair Deceptive Trade Practice Act. So that violation is up to 1 year in jail, fines of $1,000 for criminal, and then there's civil violations, $10,000 or $25,000 for repeat violations. So any feedback on, does the punishment equal the violation that they're trying to create here? Like, for example, who goes to jail from Sony if you don't turn over trade secrets?
Well, no, that's a really critical concern. I mean, when we're talking about copyrighted content and then a state law comes in and says something different and then imposes penalties for not complying, you're actually penalizing a company for enforcing its federal rights. And so by having that, it's a law that would do more harm than good in this particular case.
Well, the point is it's a novel approach around the interstate commerce and what Delegate Moutz and Delegate Wilson were talking about, that unlike a traditional sort of deregulation or pro-business, they're going after this through the Attorney General, who they want to make them the enforcement mechanism. They want them to go after you through law. And if I went down the examples of what unfair and deceptive trade practices are, some of these are legitimate things for which a violation should equal a significant criminal penalty, not turning over everything that you essentially have, which is intellectual property. That's the rub with this bill, that it's a non-starter because of the dynamic behind how they're trying to enforce it. I guess the other question I have for you is that the bill is here from your perspective. Why? What do you think they're trying to fix with this particular bill?
I honestly don't really know. I know that for the console business, this seems like there's no market failure that would necessitate government intervention, at least insofar as we're concerned.
I think it's screens.
Screens, again, a legitimate concern for everybody in this room. But again, bringing it back to our original concerns about piracy, they're really two different things.
I completely agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next panel, Mel Goldsmith, Greg Blaska, I'm sure I'm murdering these names, Lisa McCabe, John Keene, and Matt Fisher.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa McCabe, and I'm here on behalf of CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Communications Industry, in opposition to this bill. We believe the marketplace already provides consumers with choice when it comes to repairing their electronic devices. For example, manufacturers have relationships with authorized repair providers. These providers, which include local and small businesses, have received the appropriate training and have the qualifications to make sure that repairs are done properly and safely. Authorized repair ensures that the repair is done to the manufacturer's standards and also helps the value of the brand maintained throughout the life of the device. In addition to authorized repair, through manufacturers do offer walk-in options as well as mail-in rebates, mail-in services. Insurance providers also offer repair for consumers, which even may include an authorized third-party technician going to the consumer to perform the repair. And today, consumers can use independent repair to get their electronic devices repaired today, but they do so without the manufacturer's guarantee of assurance that the repair is done properly. We also have concerns that this legislation could have some unintended consequences, such as if it's not done properly. Just because this bill gives you so much information without the proper training, there could be problems such as antenna performance problems in which a call couldn't go through, or even stress on the device, the frame of the device that would make it so that it could easily break when it's dropped. This bill provides no assurance for the consumer. It provides all of this information out in the universe, but does not protect the consumer from improper repairs. We urge you not to remove this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mel Goldsmith. I am the CEO with the Atlantic Tractor. We have a number of locations in Maryland, including Chestertown, Cecilton, Queen Anne, Salisbury, Edgewater, Whiteford, and Pocomoke. I wish to point out that I have a number of people here from Atlantic Tractor today, a couple of which are technicians, and that's important, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. While John Deere equipment has become more sophisticated, Deere and Atlantic Tractor supports the customer's right to repair and has built advanced diagnostic capabilities into equipment that are available to the owner, dealers, or others. And for those customers who require even greater diagnostic capabilities, John Deere provides subscription access to Customer Service Advisor, a specialized diagnostic tool similar to the tools we use to support our customers. Customers should be able to expect the same level of information across manufacturing brands. It is appropriate solution that makes so-called right to repair legislation unnecessary. That is why manufacturers of tractors and combines such as John Deere have made an industry commitment to make available by model year 2021 the tools customers need to navigate onboard technology. In the near future, end users will have access to onboard diagnostics tools via in-cab display or wireless interface electronic diagnostic service tools and training on how to use both. Manufacturers and dealers will also make available manuals, product guides, and product service information available. In fact, as Delegate Hornberger is aware, we are currently working with the Maryland Farm Bureau to organize demonstrations to educate customers on our industry's commitment and repair offerings. I would submit to you that we have 110 technicians in our company. I think it would be very difficult for you to find a single one that would say they would be in favor of this bill as it is written, for fear that getting into that source code would create problems from an environmental standpoint, a safety standpoint, and frankly, from a used equipment standpoint, used equipment trade values would be significantly impacted. I urge you to vote against this bill. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is John King of the Association of Home. My name is John King of the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, or AHAM. We represent the entirety of the appliance industry, and we're here in opposition to House Bill 1124. Safety is a top priority for our manufacturers, and this bill raises serious safety concerns. On product safety, our products contain sophisticated and highly advanced operating systems, as well as intricate chemical compositions that are subject to a variety of safety and installation codes. It's critical that technicians are properly trained to identify these compositions and how it is properly handled to ensure the utmost safety. On consumer safety, one thing that keeps our industry apart is that technicians enter into the private homes of consumers, and therefore safety and security take on additional meanings. And on cybersecurity, the threat of cyber attacks is extended into the home through connected technology. If an independent third party does not have the proper training and inadvertently compromises the connected features of the product, the consumer and all personal data could be exposed. For this reason, we ask that you oppose House Bill 1124.
We have 4 locations in Maryland. We have locations in Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey, and Delaware. My friend next to me, he's an ag dealer. I'm in the heavy construction. We also represent the working product line, which is road building materials, ditch witch on the ground. Okay, we do oppose this bill in certain points. If you want to repair phones, I'm okay with that. But I'm worried about the safety issues that is caused by giving this code out. Again, it was already said on what we do provide to our customers who can repair it. I'm what you call the historian of our company, because I've been around for well over 35 years, and we've always allowed the customer to repair his own equipment. Technology has now moved forward. We're into drones. We're into self-driving. We're into self-digging. And we talk about having, for this protection, we're going to add language to a bill, and I've been in front of a couple of states already, fines. But when you look at that excavator that may go a wire and kills a person, or that crane that comes down from a 50-story building and kills people, you can't go back to and say, you know what, we got a good fine on that, and you pass the law and you go to jail. You can't get those people back. So we look at the environment, and we spent millions and millions of dollars, John Deere has, to improve the environment, meet the standards that are needed, and now we have to be concerned about people tampering with the code if this legislation gets passed to give out that code. And again, it's a safety issue, and that comes from our state employees. No matter whether state it is, somebody's tampering that code, that's a workman's comp issue heading our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Matt Fisher, and I represent the Consumer Technology Association. We are here today in opposition to this bill. I know you've heard testimony all day, so I will be very brief. At the beginning and end of the day, this is a market share fight. This is about authorized repair versus unauthorized. Unauthorized repair is a business model. The good folks that have testified before you today that are unauthorized dealers, that's their business model. We have a different model, and our companies protect their brands with that model through authorized dealers. Bottom line is they want the things that we have created over time, as was said earlier, and they want to take that from us. This is a business fight between two businesses. There aren't consumers here asking you for redress. This is a business fight. Again, it's been rejected last year in 20 states. States are rejecting it again this year. Would ask you to reject it here, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
That concludes the testimony on House Bill 1124. We'll move to House Bill 799. Delegate Hornberger.